I'm very, very pleased to be able to welcome you back to the afternoon and welcome you back to a session which is our panel discussion. The panel discussion is designed for your questions, both online and for those of you here in the room. There's been a couple of questions, those of you who are here in the room, of who is in the room from the from Lymphoedema Association Australia. I'm getting all my acronyms wrong. I'm going to have to work that through. So I am going to ask the board members that are here to stand up and wave and say hello. Liesl over here, she's our treasurer and from Victoria. We have Lynn from the ACT, Mia from Queensland, Fleur from here in the beautiful Hobart, Tasmania. We have Teresa from Queensland. We have Sally, who's from New South Wales, and I'm from Victoria. So we've got a nice mix. We haven't got our... Yes, we've got Cheryl, who's in at the Professionals Conference from Victoria. We've got Debbie from New South Wales, who's not here with us, and also Barrett representing from across at WA. So it's a nice mix from right across. There's been a question online that I'm going to kick off first, which is to ask, is there opportunity for New Zealand involvement? I have no border issues with membership from anywhere in the world. I haven't spoken to other board members, but let me just say, we don't do borders, so really welcome to join as a member from wherever you are, and really keen to have some conversations across the ditch. That would be fantastic. Please email us. For our panel today, we have Annette Loudon here with us. We have Professor Jan Douglas here with us again, and we have Annette. Sorry. Introduce myself. We have. Hello, everyone. And Sally Kerr. Hi, everyone. Okay, so to kick off today's panel, my first question to each of you is, if there was one thing, or maybe two, that are your best tips or pieces of advice that you would like someone who is living with lymphedema to know about, be it that newly diagnosed or, you know, they've been living with this for a number of years, what might that be?
I guess it's the start, from my experience with people, of a different journey. But it's not, it might be a life you hadn't expected, but with some changes, the life will be just as exciting, and teaching for both yourself and for those around you. And as I said before, when you joined in so beautifully, it's so humbling for me to see that in effect. It's what I've learnt that from you, people I've worked with lymphedema.
Thanks, Annette. I'm going to pick up on what you said there in teaching those around you and talking to those around you, because that is the one thing that I would say is engage your families and get your families involved in your self-care if you can. Engage your other health professionals. Who else do you see? Might not be for your lymphedema, but do you go and get Reiki? Are you seeing an aromatherapist? What do you go to a yoga class that maybe not have an Annette who's very fully trained up there leading you? Connect those people with your lymphedema therapist. If you're not confident in passing on the information yourself, connect those people with the lymphedema therapist so that they can become part of the village that is your lymphedema self-care. So don't think that you have to do it all yourself. Your families can help if they understand. The people in your community can help if they understand. So try try and make your group of people that is involved in your lymphedema bigger than just yourself, with you in the middle of it?
My suggestion would be, I guess lymphedema management is a long-term prospect that involves a lot of different things that you need to do to support your lymphedema and to maintain it in a healthy state. And being able to do those things consistently in the long term is what we know can achieve the best outcomes. But we also have to balance that with life and the ups and downs that happen in life. So allow yourself the time to let things slip by when they need to, but be accountable to yourself to be able to bring them back when you then have the reserves to do that, so that if you look back across a number of months or a number of years, you will have either maintained or achieved some changes in your lymphedema, and that where things derail, they don't derail forever. You just give yourself a reprieve and get back to it when you can.
And following on from that, I think my advice would be, this is not your fault, okay? This is not your fault. It's not because you haven't done something or you have done something. You've got it, and that's not your fault. And have some self-compassion as you go about looking after yourself. So don't beat yourself up if you haven't done your massage that day, or you or you've splurged on the wonderful food that we've had here today. You know, don't beat yourself up, but get back into looking after yourself. Put yourself first, and that's also hard. So self comes first in self-care. And so put yourself first, be kind to yourself. That would be my advice.
Perfect. So I'm going to grab a question from online. Could you comment on water and hydration levels and the impact that this might have on lymphedema?
I love talking about this one. The water is so important to your lymphatic system, and what you've got to understand is that bathtub analogy, that what goes in has to equal what goes out. And one thing that used to come up a lot in the clinic with me was I would talk to people about how much water they're drinking, and often people would say, oh, but you know, I'm getting up in the night 3 times already, and you want me to drink more water? Yes. Do you know why you're getting up 3 times in the night? Because you are dehydrated. And this is where, again, you've got to understand a little bit about how your body works. If you are dehydrated during the day, that loose connective tissue, that bathtub that all your cells are living in, it's got an automatic protective mechanism, which is hold on to some of the water. Make sure that the cells have got some water held close to them. Don't let so much water go out the lymph system. Then you go to bed at night, you're not so active, you're asleep under the nice warm blankets, and the whole water relationship changes. Now you've got too much water in the tissues, because now you don't have to hold it there. So your body lets it go, goes out into the venous system, through your kidneys, out into your blood. You've got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go to the loo. You must drink. If you are getting up at night too often, too frequently, and I'm not talking to the guys here who might have some prostate issues, that's another thing, but if you're worried about how much you're getting up in the night and going to the toilet, it's because you are dehydrated during the day. And I'm not saying drink 8 glasses of water before you go to bed. I'm saying drink more earlier in the day. Drink more water during the day. And that should help with that getting up in the middle of the night. And it supports the lymph system. It's not going to make your lymphedema worse. The lymph system generally requires unloading. It needs the system to be loaded up to function properly. So you've got to keep the water load up. So don't be afraid to drink more. Just do it at the right time.
Fantastic. I've got another question that's online. A lot of people have talked about elevation. Could you comment on an adjustable bed that might elevate the legs at night, or how to do that?
There are some adjustable beds out there, and they have a lot of different settings on them. So depending on where your lymphedema is, the settings may or may not be appropriate. So some of the adjustable beds will have it that your pelvis is the lowest point you know, your legs are elevated, your head may be elevated, and your pelvis may be the lowest point. If you have a problem with pelvic swelling, that may in fact exacerbate that condition rather than improve it. So just be a little cautious about the overall elevation of each of the parts of the bed. Some of the newer beds that I've seen will elevate the knees, but the feet actually dip down again. So that's not an ideal setup either. What you're aiming for is the legs to be higher than the heart. So the feet need to be a little higher than the knee, which needs to be a little higher than the hip. But it's not excessive elevation that you're aiming for when you're elevating. It's not comfortable, and it disturbs your sleep, and it will probably put strain on your lower back. So really, when you're lying down flat, your heart's in a pretty low position, and your leg only needs to be slightly above your heart to achieve effective elevation. So usually I recommend something very simple, which is just one pillow under your leg at night should be sufficient for most people to be comfortable and be able to achieve some elevation.
So I've got a question for you. When I was first diagnosed, I have primary bilateral. The suggestion that was made was maybe just grab a book, similar height, and pop it under the two bed ends. Lift so far, you know, this much, or something similar, a chopper wood, whatever, a couple of inches, and that would be sufficient for the elevation required. Simple, cheap. What do you think?
Yeah, I think some people do find that as a more comfortable way to elevate, because you don't have to think about it, you don't have to move things around, and it can achieve the same end goal. The other way you can do it is something under the mattress rather than something under the feet of the bed. But they're all different ways of achieving the same end point. Yeah.
Because I'm really good at kicking anything at the end of the bed off, so a pillow has never worked for me, but yeah.
Yeah, sometimes people like the knee support that it can give.
I had a few clients who went to, like, you know, Clark Rubber or something, got some quite dense foam cut into a wedge, so that from about the level of the hips, and on an ensemble, because that's the problem with the elevating the end, and only, like Mary said, it only has to be a tiny little bit. You won't even notice that you're sleeping downhill, but not all beds are suitable for that. Your ensemble type bed with all those legs isn't suitable for that. But if you can get a wedge of foam, put it between the mattress and the base, so it's a very gentle, it's not going to muck up your mattress, because you only want the mattress at the bottom end to be that much higher than the base, and you've got elevation. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to check if there's any in the room. I've got more online, but any questions in the room?
What about for the arm and the breast lymphedema for elevation?
Yep. So that was a question for those online, if you couldn't hear it, just around elevation at night for breast and arm edema.
I think you have to find your position that's comfortable, and there's a lot of factors involved in doing that. Personally, I have arm lymphedema. I found a larger feather-based pillow most comfortable because it supports well, and I can roll around and it stays in position as well. But be creative, and you don't necessarily have to have special gizmos and gadgets. I know there's some really interesting things out there online if you search for arm elevators that you have to pay a fortune for, and it's really quite inventive. And I know one of my patients actually had constructed a sling that she tied on a hook above the bed and put her hand in each night. I don't think we need to go to those extremes. Basically, all you need to do is have your arm out to the side. It improves the flow of the venous return from your arm anyway. And once again, it's just that where is your heart? What's the level? You don't need to have it up very, very far. So I think keep it as simple as possible, because you want that good sleep. That good sleep is just as important. And if you do happen to get in a position that you swell slightly overnight, if it would happen, then you just spend a few more minutes in the morning to clear that out, and then you're right. I think comfort is important. Find a comfortable position. Think, where is my hand in comparison to my heart? Try to have your arm not bent up too much so that you don't constrict the flow. Keep it out in a comfortable position. And like I said, out to the side just a little bit to open up the axilla.
And just for those that might be suffering from breast lymphedema, when that was being a really big problem for me, what was happening a lot is I like to sleep on that side, and the lymphedema was on this side, and in the night that really heavy breast would kind of, it would wake me up because the pain of the breast. So I actually made myself a little round pillow that I put in there and so I slept with this pillow supporting that breast away from the other breast. So I don't know whether that might help some women who are dealing with breast lymphedema.
And the other thing is to play around with which side you sleep on. So very often you're told that you have to put the lymphedema arm up and when you side lie on a pillow on your side. And what I actually found was my body was counterintuitive. I was actually better if I rolled onto the side, and I think it might have been with breast drainage was better that way, and then that, but with my arm out to the elevated on a pillow, so I'm often on that side, if that makes sense. So really play around and see what works best for you is really the key thing, because there's various ways our bodies work and we don't all work the same way, and so just find out what works for you.
You might wait for the microphone just because people are having trouble hearing online, and just for the speakers, if you can hold the mic up so it's catching you, that'd be great.
So I have a surgeon, a radiation oncologist, a medical oncologist, and most recently an anaesthetist, who are all, shall I say, dismissive when I've mentioned my lymphedema requirements. How do you go about letting them know that this is a life-altering condition and it is rather serious?
It probably depends on which procedure you're coming up to. I think raising it with them, as you've done, is the first step, so that it's on their radar, that that's something that could become, is an issue for you or could become more of an issue for you. And then I think surgeons and radiation oncologists, they're versed in the data. So ask them, you know, what does the research say is the impact on lymphedema from this procedure? And what does the research say I can do to reduce, or you can do, to reduce the impact on my lymphedema in this procedure? That puts them thinking about it in a different mindset, that they need to reframe and risk stratify what their medical intervention is.
Just something that's occurring to me here, I've got lots of ideas for your association. What if we had a lymphedema advocate in every hospital? Like, you know, I remember when I worked at Flinders, the volunteer groups there are just fantastic. That volunteer organisation in the hospital, they raised money for the lymphedema research unit. They were fantastic. What if in that volunteer pool at the hospital, most hospitals have them, what if there was a lymphedema advocate who was the kind of person that was able, if you're not, because this is the problem, you should be sitting there saying to your surgeon, listen to me, I'm the client, you think you know everything, but I'm the person that knows the most about me. But who's confident enough to do that when you're actually in the... But if you had a lymphedema advocate in that facility that you could go to and say, look, I really like my surgeon, but I'm having trouble communicating this to them, can you please help me with that? And maybe that person can then intervene on your behalf or come to an appointment with you. There might be some program like that. I don't know, is that happening anywhere?
I would say because I work in public health, the advocate is your multidisciplinary team. So if it's in a public health setting, that there should be a physiotherapist, speech therapist, a nurse practitioner, or somebody similar who you can express your concerns to comfortably. We would hope, not always, but if you have another member of your team that you can speak more comfortably to, and you don't feel that you can't raise it with the medical professional directly, sometimes they can act as your advocate as well.
Yes, I was going to say, go to your lymphedema therapist and get them to act as an advocate on your behalf. But that also presumes that you have a lymphedema therapist that you can touch base with. But yes, multidisciplinary teams. The other people that are very useful, I found in my situation, was the oncopsychologist was very good. If you've got a psychologist who specialises in cancer care, they were very good at hearing my concerns and then taking it further with the relevant people. So yeah, think outside the direct communication. It is definitely on the agenda to try to raise awareness throughout the whole health system to make people much more lymphedema aware. But yes, they can be very dismissive at times. Often within the health system, I find the radiologists tend to have a better understanding because they've been they're one of the aspects that are known to create more problems with lymphedema. So they're much more likely to listen to your concerns than perhaps the surgeon who thinks his surgery is so good it's not going to cause it. And the chemotherapy that the medical oncologist will be giving you is also prone to it, but it's more recent. So I'd go for the radiation specialist if you really need to make a change within your team. Yeah.
And more broadly, I guess one of the things for all of us with lymphedema is how to, I guess one of my bugbears for 20 odd years is if I had diabetes, they pay for diabetes educators to do this. They pay for diabetes educators to educate everyone across my healthcare group and to educate me. But for some reason, I've got lymphedema, so I have to educate everybody around me, from my next door neighbour to my workplace to my GP. That's my job. And so one of the goals, one of the visions that we would have when we talk about more awareness and more health system awareness is how do we as an association lobby and advocate that practice nurse that does all the chronic health conditions, diabetes, asthma, whatever, and they educate. Oh, why aren't they educating me on lymphedema? Why aren't they educating the health profession? But I also pop a challenge out to all of you, and we will put some resources onto our website around this. And I speak to the therapists in here. I wrote an article for Lymph Exchange not long ago. How are you, when you've got someone on the couch, helping someone with lymphedema to have the articulate message to take to their health professionals? It's not easy to have that conversation, particularly if they're resistant. So how are we actually, without sounding like we're being smart or we've got it off Google, how do we educate in a respectful way? Because not every GP can know every bit of every single one, but how are we having those conversations in a respectful way together to share our healthcare? And I think being able to articulate that well is really a bit of a practice. Practice with your friends maybe, but it is a bit of a practice. I say heaven help the GP that happened to give me my flu shot a couple of years ago when I went into the flu clinic, when he said, what are your health conditions? And I take every opportunity. So if I go and see someone and they say, how are you because you've got the flu? I say, gee, I've got lymphedema as well. You know what? The impact to my body when I, blah, blah. I'm travelling overseas. What do you recommend to me? I've heard this and that. What do you think the impacts might be? I come back afterwards. I make appointments to see health professionals. Just new GP, go and make an appointment, double appointment. I want to talk to you about my healthcare. I want to talk to you about what happens to my body at different times that I've noticed and I'd like you to know about. And if you came by our stand, there's a GP guide around lymphedema. There's a whole lot of resources. There's a book. My GP got the book, got the guide, pulls it out regularly. And the GP who went to give me a flu shot and said, oh, you poor thing, I've got 3 or 4 patients and there's nothing you can do, discovered that I was a pretty good advocate. And interestingly, I got to speak to the whole practice at a practice meeting to have a little chat about what was possible, and they all got the gift of a handbook and the GP guide that Liesl is handing out, or got over there at the moment, they're on your tables. So think about, when you go in and you're having a conversation about anything that's going on in your body. I talk about the fact that, going through menopause, what did I notice? I give that information. And in terms of my lymphedema, this is what I've noticed. This is the drag on me. Think about your opportunities to have those conversations. I really encourage you to do it. And if you're not sure about the words, ask the questions. Ask your therapist to help you. What would be useful? Could you write me a letter to take to my GP, to take to my specialist, to open that conversation? And they'll do it.
Can I just add to that? How many of you live in a rural or remote area? Anyone? Yeah, and probably some of our remote people too. I've lived in a lot of rural and remote areas, and this comes back to what we were saying earlier about tell everyone you know. When I lived in remote areas, people would go to the major cities to have their cancer surgery, then be sent back with no education at all about lymphedema. It still happens. I'm in a fairly rural area in northwest Tasmania, and I'm a yoga teacher, you know. And I say to them, do you know about lymphedema? They say, should I still have this swelling? And I say, do you know about lymphedema? And because they tell me, then I can put them in contact with people. And I think this is why it gets back to letting everyone know. Like, I get really annoyed that I have to be the one to tell this poor person that lymphedema exists. And I've had I lived on Kangaroo Island for a while, and earlier I showed slides of people with leg lymphedema. Whole families would come over to see me because no one had ever talked to them about their primary lymphedema and told them that they could do yoga, for example. So I know I get tired of it too, telling people, because I don't think it's my job. I agree with what you were saying, sorry I don't know your name, that it's very tiring to be telling these medical people. They're timed and, you feel bad enough anyway. But the more people you tell, the more they can also help you advocate. And if a yoga teacher can do it, anyone. And that led on Kangaroo Island, I've got to say, to me training all the staff at the little country hospital in about lymphedema, which is pretty ridiculous, really. The yoga teacher had to teach medical people. But, yeah.
I just want to say one more thing about who to tell. It's too late for the last census that we had, but who put lymphedema as a chronic disease on their census? A few of you did. Next time we have a census, we need to put lymphedema on the census. It's a chronic disease. They need to know how many people have it. So I know it's going to be a long time before it comes around again, but try and keep that in mind. Next time we have a census, or next time there's any opportunity like that, where you can get your data into the main system, because the government needs to know. The government's got no idea, really.
Every time it asks health conditions tick and then it says other, I always put lymphedema in. Hopefully they'll start noticing.
I was just going to add to that and say, sometimes when we go to see a new specialist or a specialist who's difficult to interact with, we're not at our most confident. We're feeling a little bit fragile. And if it's a new procedure that's coming up that you really specifically want to ask about the impact on lymphedema and how that can be reduced, and you don't feel able to do that yourself, taking information, as Mary said, is one thing that can be helpful, but the other is taking somebody else and having that person know the question that you want to ask so that they can be your advocate whilst you're in there. That person has a little bit of the emotion removed and might be able to ask the question if you're not able to do that in that circumstance.
There was a question down the back. Mia, did you have your hand up before? Oh, okay. Just over here.
I am hoping that now with this new national association and also having local support groups, that the word will get out and that there will be more exposure. That's what I'm hoping. My question is, I have regular laser treatment, and there's a lovely facility up at St Mary's on the East Coast, and it's more like a retreat for me. It's 3 days away, and they do a wonderful job. Laser, is there more research available now? Does it work? Is it actually recognised as a valid treatment for lymphedema?
I don't know that any of us are specific laser experts on this panel, but it's certainly a treatment that would be considered a conservative standard treatment for lymphedema. There is evidence for its use and its benefits in multiple conditions, lymphedema being one of them. So I don't know the level of research that you're looking for, but yes, there is absolutely research to support it, and it's a commonly prescribed treatment for lymphedema now. Yeah, it's great you found benefit from it.
And just on that, remembering from back in my session that remember that things like the laser are adjunct treatments. Don't think it's going to be the only thing that you can do. But as a part of what you can do. And one of the things, again, I don't know that I can talk too authoritatively about laser, but target it onto the hard areas. So, you know, when I was talking about the skin mobilisation and finding the hard areas, I hear from a lot of clients that they really immediately feel the softening from the laser. So combine the laser with your skin mobilisation and your massage, because the laser will help to do that softening up, to help stir up the bath, and then do it at the same time as you're doing your lymphatic drainage massage, because you've stirred up the bath water and you've got some of the fluid freed up. Now you've got to help the system to pull it out as well. So that would be my advice, is to... These things have synergistic effects with each other. So use them in combination with other things, and I would always do laser in combination with massage.
Yeah, well, that's what they do at St Mary's, yes. It's an hour of laser and an hour of massage. And I feel after the 3 days that my arm a lot lighter, and yeah, it really has broken up just the tough bits. So, thank you.
We've got a comment online from a GP. Debbie, who's our Vice President of the new association's also a GP. And she says, as a GP, I encourage patients to give me their information about lymphedema so that we can keep it on file and refer back to it together as needed. So, you know, welcoming of, you know, having that letter from your therapist, having that letter through around your lymphedema and what that's looking like, so that she can really work with you. So, well worth giving that some thought.
And make sure that they've got lymphedema. You know, they've all got their, you know, so all your notes are all digitised now, and so they've got on their screen a list of all the things that you've been diagnosed with. Make sure they've got lymphedema on that list, so that every time they look at your notes, it's there. Obviously there, it's something that you've been diagnosed with.
Better to have it up the top.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that things are changing slowly. I know that my GP practice that I'm in actually has sort of, they're on a computer, so that if anything comes up, they type in the word and it pops up and reminds them of what it's about. So whenever I mention lymphedema, well, they've had a few changes in GPs. They've typed it in, it comes up with the guidelines, and it's just the system that practice is linked into. So that is one thing that's very positive. And in New South Wales, a lot of the public health professionals are now, well, it's not a compulsory course at this stage, but it's part of the professional development that New South Wales Health has developed, is first aid, recognition of lymphedema, so they'll be able to spot it, advise people and who to refer on. And so there's a couple of courses that are online. So there are small changes happening. It's not filtering through necessarily, it may not be the medicos that would necessarily access those sorts of courses, but definitely allied health professionals and nursing probably would. So we are making small changes. It's very slow, but we're getting there. And if we just keep building that momentum up, I'm sure we can affect more change in the next decade or so.
Well, while we're talking about GPs, one of the things that we do in the service I work in, recognising that some of our patients we see for a really long time, and GPs are incredibly busy, they have to treat you for a lot of different conditions, that sometimes even though lymphedema is on the list and they're aware that you have it, it then is a little bit dismissed as, yes, we know you have it. So one thing we do to try to keep it at the top of the list is we send a letter if we're seeing people in long term, we send a letter every year with a summary of the assessment of the lymphedema, how is it? How has it been over the past year? And any treatment changes that we're planning for the following year ahead. Just so that a GP can assist in factoring that into any other treatments that you might have. So if you're seeing a health provider in the long term for your lymphedema, that might be something to see if they can add in as a communication mechanism if you have a regular GP.
The other thing you can do, I have to get a letter from my health fund every year to say that I'm still being treated and that really I need my garments. Funnily enough, they require it every year. I ask my lymphedema therapist to CC my GP, just send it through. They had a letter on file every year reminding them that I've got treatment happening, regardless of any other conversation.
And the other thing we do with that letter is CC you as well, so that you have that information, not just in your GP and you can't get it. Then if you go to another health provider, you can take it as well. So that might be something to ask for too.
We haven't talked much about the mental health impacts. As someone who's lived with lymphedema for too many years that I want to think about, it can be incredibly distressing. You know, you want to look nice, and I must admit that, you know, finding shoes, I every time I get dressed, I go, I look so dowdy. You know, there's a real impact, I think, to those limbs, and for me, certainly, it does get me down at times. So I guess I'm going to pose yet again a what's your tip, what's your thoughts? You're speaking to people all the time, so what's your best thoughts about how we can continue to live well and live with hope, but still feel good about ourselves?
I think I'm in a position to answer that. With my research, 85% of people commented some level of distress. So distress at being diagnosed with lymphedema and living with lymphedema is probably normal, if that can be said to be normal. So I think it's something that if you're feeling any level of distress, you're not the only one in the lymphedema world. Now what that then does to you, because my approach was looking at how people learn to self-manage, and what distress of any level or depression of any level does is it takes up power from your brain, from the part of your brain that is supposed to be working as you learn new stuff. So if you are at all distressed or depressed, it's going to have a great impact on how well you can learn to adjust and cope and deal with and learn new stuff to do and why you're doing it. So I would suggest that it's probably the key point that you need to start with is learning about how to cope, how to get to deal with those emotions, to seek help. Perhaps for the psychologists are fantastic at talking you through this, because yes, body shame, body embarrassment is a very common feature within this condition. And it impacts on, and if you're trying to learn something, if you're at work and they ask you to do a new task, but that's a learning process as well. And any level of distress is going to take from the quality of the rest of your life as well. So that's one important thing, to learn how to work through your emotions and work on your stress management skills and your anxiety skills. Find how to do, what are the strategies that you need to do to do that first. As part, and recognise that as part of your lymphedema self-management as well. And then from that point, if you can change that mindset, it makes it easier to then learn the next step, which might be how to do some massage, how to do something else. And from a personal story, I'm hogging the mic here, a personal story, it took me 10 years of putting on my pantyhose in the morning, and for those of us who have got compression pantyhose, we know how tough it is getting them on. It took me a while to actually catch myself, setting myself up for a bad day, because I would be so angry that I had this condition, and the anger that I had to put these things on, and I suddenly realised I was doing this every day and starting the day off grumpy. So it was colouring the rest of my day. So now I have strategies in place, so while I'm putting them on, I will distract myself with something else so I don't focus in on the anger and get that anger button wound up. And so my days now go much smoother, unless it's always when you're running late, isn't it?
And it might be the better one to talk about this too, but managing the stress is very important, and physiologically it's very important too, because stress shuts down your lymph system. It's a natural immune response to protect you from harm. I'm not going to go into the whole physiology of it now. Just understand that if you let your stress levels get very high, it's very hard for your lymph system to work properly. And I was very lucky when this came up for me and all that stress of my diagnosis and everything. In my 20s, I had learned transcendental meditation, and I had let that go, you know, family and kids and all the rest of it. I'd stopped doing it. But at that point when I found myself lying in bed at night, you know, in the middle of the night, still awake because I was so concerned, I suddenly remembered my TM practice, and it really got me through that stage. And the deep breathing exercises that you do, your body cannot have a stress response and deep breathe at the same time. So would you like to talk more about that at all, Annette?
Well, we did a whole session on effective deep breathing, didn't we, this morning? There's other breathing techniques we can use too, but as I said, when you are feeling stressed, it's very hard sometimes to do that. You do the exact opposite. You'll breathe and it'll be right up in your neck, and you think in the middle of the night, I'm breathing deeply like she said, but I'm more stressed, and it's because it's not quite that relaxed full breathing that we practice that you all did so well. I've found a number of things, finding something that you like, whether it's dragon boat racing or coming to yoga. Some people like to be in a group where they can, I've had groups of men and women really happy to discuss the effects on their life. And that might, at the end of yoga or, you know, during the yoga, laugh about it and say, oh, my leg won't do this, or my arm won't do this, or whatever. And that's therapeutic too, seeing other people in that situation, whatever groupy thing you like to do. And then other people are the exact opposite. They don't want anyone to know about it. And so I kind of teach both groups of people. So the way I teach is everything's individualised. So people with leg lymphedema, for example, will start with their legs elevated, and someone in the same class with arm lymphedema might be lying, and someone with a heart condition might be lying in another way. And I find that effective too, that you can deal with it very quietly. It's always getting back to this thing of you taking the time to tell whoever you're seeing and telling them how you want them to deal with it, whether you are happy for it to be open or whether you want it to be more discreet. The studies in yoga now, in every kind of illness, they all agree that yoga will, and meditation, will decrease the stress response, and they're at last conclusive. So they're on every website, whereas 30 years ago they'd say, don't go to yoga, they're hippies or something. That's the change I've seen over my 40 years teaching this. So, but it doesn't have to be yoga. It can be a walking group or some other kind of group that has... Remember this morning I said, think of something that makes you feel expansive. And Jan and I were talking at the moment, as we're getting older, it's little children in our families that make us feel expansive, much to my own shock. I don't know about yours. And for me, it's always been nature. But for you, it might be walking with a friend or sitting, reading a good book. So you've got to try and find what works, and that self-care that you were talking about, Sally, following that. And sometimes you've got to try, if it's yoga, 10 yoga teachers till you find the right one. I train yoga teachers for the lymphatic system. All my yoga now works the lymphatic system. And one of the professionals here with lupus came up and said, I use your DVD every day because it helps my immune system. And I said, I'm really glad to hear that, because now all my students, I teach lymphatic yoga because I found it so effective. So when I train teachers, I ask them to go with their student to their lymphedema therapist so that they can understand how to treat lymphedema, and again make this network of proactive people. So there's lots that you can do, and I'm sure if we even brainstormed, and you may have been doing that in lunchtime, we'd all find things that worked for you. But if it doesn't work, excuse me, once, go back and try someone else, whatever it is, if it's Tai Chi or dragon boat racing or walking. I tell people try something at least 3 times. And don't give up. Each of us have probably found something we all have things in our lives, don't we? Interestingly, I've worked in hot climates, and when I came down to Tasmania to do my master's, the people in Tasmania had the least stress I've ever met about wearing compression sleeves. And I assumed that was because people don't really care much how we dress in Tasmania. I dress quite differently here. I dress in so I know if some of you come from warmer climates, it's probably a bigger issue for you than whether you live down here. But just, yeah, keep trying. But the research is really conclusive with breathing and yoga and meditation now that it will reduce the stress response. I was very stressed last night, though, because I had to present today. I want to be honest with you. I was doing a yoga nidra at midnight thinking, oh, this isn't work. You know, like, we're all human. So I've been doing yoga since I lived in a remote village in Asia when I was 20, and it doesn't always work with me. I'm just being honest. So take heart, please.
I enjoy swimming. And it's good for my lymphatics. You don't have to swim hard. A bit of treading water in cold water is always good. But what I would say is that when you're particularly stressed at the end of the workday and you're swimming a few laps, don't try and talk yourself out of it at the same time. Sorry. Got a question at the back?
It's not a question as such. It's just probably going to add to Sally's comments about self-care. And as somebody who has lymphedema waist down, including the pink bits, one of the things I do is, particularly if it's looking like being a rough day or I'm having a couple of rough days, is go looking for the brightest pair of knickers I've got. Put them on. Start with that. Don't forget your lipstick, because you're putting a smile on your face, you're putting colour on your face. You can look in the mirror and there's somebody looking back at you smiling with lipstick on. That's a really good start. Have a think about some of the things that are perhaps flags for you that you're going down that black hole. For me, it's when I become decision poor, but I also stand in front of the wardrobe and think, oh, that black t-shirt's easier to put on, and put my hand on it and think, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm going looking for bright. I need bright. So start with your knickers, finish with your lipstick. That's it from me.
Thanks, Mia. I'm going to pose you another question, because many of us have travelled to be here today. What's your best travel tip?
I have travelled a lot. Good. And despite all the conflicting evidence about everything, I religiously wear my sleeve. Breast edema was often a bigger problem for me than arm edema, and so I would often be sitting in the plane. I have to put the microphone down. Because I could feel my breast expanding while I was sitting in the seat. And it comes back to the kind of advice that I used to give my clients about everything, because sometimes they will have been to other therapists that have told them what they can't do for their lymphedema. And I just decided that I was never going to tell anybody that they couldn't do something, lymphedema is limiting enough without thinking that you have to give up things. If there's something that you really want to do, like going on a long-haul flight, do it. But just understand the impact. So again, you've got to be aware, you've got to know, understand the impact that's going to have on your lymphedema, and then plan and think about how am I going to mitigate that. Does that mean that before I go on the flight, I should go and see my therapist and try and get 2 or 3 days of bandaging in before I go? Should I have an appointment the day after I get back so that I can have 2 or 3 days of catching up and getting, getting back what I'd lost because of the travel? The other thing is to, it's so tempting, you want to take your big heavy hand luggage on and put it up in the overhead thing instead of checking it. I don't know why people put huge suitcases up there, just check the bloody thing. Take as little on the plane with you as you can, because the more that you're walking around airports carrying or dragging, I've dragged my trolley thing over some really rough ground sometimes. It really bothers my arm to do that. So just think about don't load yourself up. Pay for that extra checked bag if you need to put your suitcase underneath. But my advice is don't not go. Go if you want to go. Just plan and do things before and after. Things might get a little bit out of control while you're away, but if you've got that before and after plan, then that will minimise what's going to happen.
Can I say there's lymphedema treatment in every country? So when I flew to Germany a couple of years ago, 25 hours worth of one stop for a few hours, and there I was. The following day, I went and saw a German physio. And in a number of different countries, I booked myself in. It was pretty much fun trying to explain what I was looking for in some ways, because English is reasonably universal and I had nothing else and they had a smattering. A lot of different ways massage is given, but gee, it was really helpful. So keep that in your toolkit as well. Yeah,
our Dr. Voda website, we have an international listing of therapists, and I did on a number of occasions. I would get emails and phone calls from people in other countries going, right, I'm coming to Australia and we're going around, so I'm booking all my appointments in advance. So there would be people, they'd been seeing a Voda therapist somewhere else, so they wanted to find a Voda therapist where they're going, and they made advance bookings because we've got that international website. So language can be a barrier, obviously, but maybe the country that you're going to has something like the NLP, the ALA listing. Maybe you can find a therapist and pre-book something before you even get there.
And really helpful to have a letter from your own physio, because Google Translate works. So, that was a lifesaver in a couple of instances. I also try where I can to book a hotel that has a pool. And I get there and I spend an hour treading water because the pools aren't enough to do laps. But where I can get a pool, I know, happy days in terms of my lymphedema, and it might cost me a little bit more, but it means I can do the walking I want to do the next day. So just a couple of tips.
You did make me nearly hyperventilate about having to take a small bag on the plane because that would not be a strategy for me. But my version of that strategy would be just get a suitcase with 4 wheels so I can wheel that on the plane and have all of my things with me. Someone else can lift it up. There's always a helpful tall person. And the other things, I guess there's a few planning tips that I usually suggest. Probably don't plan for things to be their best with your lymphedema. Take some additional strategies in case it doesn't turn out as, plan for the worst, hope for the best. So if you have a night garment or a set of compression wraps in addition to your day garments, but you don't use them routinely, try to pop them in your travel luggage, because then if you have a bit of a flare-up because you've done something great in the day, you can pop a night garment on overnight, or you can pop a set of wraps on. You don't have to, if you don't have the time to find a therapist and find another appointment. That's a really great way of being able to self-manage. If you don't sometimes wear layers in your garments and you don't wear them all the time, maybe you just pop the extra layer on. So adding another garment in your bag would assist with that too.
And of course the other thing is don't get stressed. which is really hard to do when you travel. But one of the tips is to not have sort of your changeover points too tightly together that you think you're going to miss the next connecting train because it's running, the first one's running a bit late. So just allow that little extra buffer zone in your planning of everything so you reduce the stress. Make sure you stay hydrated as well. So especially if you're on an air-conditioned train or plane, and try to avoid the alcohol, which will dehydrate you. But if you're stressed, maybe take the alcohol so that you're not stressed. Balance it out. Work out what's best for you. I'm actually one of those challenged people that go completely against the research in that my arm actually swells quite badly if I fly. So I'm a surface traveller these days, and it's amazing how many train trips and now ferry trips I've had in order to travel, but don't let it stop you I'm anticipating going around the world sometime soon. It's as soon as cruising is now back to safe standards, so a couple of years' time probably. So, but I think the thing is, you want to do something. You can make it happen. It may not be the perfect ideal way that you would like to pre-lymphedema have had it, but you can still have a really good time and you can still make it happen so that it is a good thing for you, and so quality of life. But once again, be easy on yourself. Don't set yourself up for failure. Set yourself up for a good time.
One of the really insightful things that one of my friends said to me about probably 20 years ago now, and she's a go-getter. She travels and just keeps going all day, yeah? And I said to her, I don't know whether I can actually walk all day, really. I'm not sure that I can quite do this. And after a couple of days hanging out together, travelling around New Zealand as it was, she said, I worked it out. I said, what have you worked out? And she said, so long as every hour I give you 15 minutes sitting, you can do a hell of a lot in a day, more than you thought. But if I push you past an hour and a half, we've got to have an hour's break. How interesting. I never knew that about myself. And that's how I travel. And when I travelled with my two sisters through Europe, we averaged about 14,500 steps a day, and I'm not a fit person. But yeah, they went, oh, okay, so we have to stop every so often and look at what's happening around us. Fantastic, we'll make it work. So think about what your body does. And sometimes it's the people closest to you who actually know what your body does and can give you that insight because you're so busy moving, you haven't thought it through. There's a question here.
Like Mia, it's not actually a question, but relating to travel, coming down here, my 36-year-old baby says, Mum, how are you going to get there on your own? I mean, I've been travelling for 50 odd years on my own, and all of a sudden, because I had this luggage, and I take my pump and my night garments and that with me. So thanks to Michael, I don't have to, telling me that you can carry that on, you can take that with you, and you don't have to pay any extra for the baggage and booking it through, which is good because it's about 9 or 10 kilos by the time you add everything in together. And she said, you're not going to be able to do that. And she sort of, and I said, well, I've done it before, but people will look at you and often they'll see, and I've had so much, I've been blessed with so many people helping, and I haven't even had to look like I was helpless to help me move things. And it's been, and I'm like you, fancy not taking everything on the plane with you. I mean, I want my tablet and I want my lipstick and everything in the bag, and Grace, what do you want that for? What do you want that for? You only, make sure you put extra knickers and a bra and a pair of socks in case something happens. And you know, all the years I've never done that. I was like, oh, maybe I'd better. So it's just travelling and coming down here, it's just been absolutely phenomenal. And like the girl said, don't be frightened to do it. Have a go. And I'm getting all ready for the next one, and it's hard to what to do to pack because I have another medical condition that doesn't, where I have to take extra underwear. And she said, what do you want all that for? I said, because you don't know if it's going to dry down there in Tasmania. And I found that I had a pair of socks and it took 3 days to dry, but not ones that I wear a lot. So, and they were only light socks. So it's and also if you're booking into accommodation that you don't know, make sure if they've got an elevator, if they're going to put you on the second or third floor, even on the first floor. First night down here when I was in Launceston, I had to climb up about 15 steps to get to my room. And I only took the luggage with my my pump and everything because I thought, oh, crikeys. And then look at my face, the girl must have just said, I'll take it up for you, I'll take it up for you. But be sure that you can get up and down because the steps weren't very, they were quite narrow as well. So that's something to bear in mind, that you can get into the accommodation and get back down the stairs.
So I think in summary there we have to plan for a hotel with a swimming pool and an elevator or on the ground floor.
Yes. Perfect.
And with drying facilities.
And drying facilities.
I've got a question over here.
Mine's just a quick little tip as well. I've travelled to over 60 countries prior to my lymphoedema diagnosis. I've only travelled once post-diagnosis, but what I found really handy is on eBay, I'm sure you can get them in stores as well, but it's the little blow-up footstools.
Yes.
So I'm sorry if you've covered this earlier. I was always a window seat person. I sleep perfectly on a plane, that they have to wake me up for transit because I'm still asleep. But what I do now is I book a bulkhead seat in the middle of the plane. I go to the bathroom and I blow up my little step, and what I do is I put my legs on it, but I also put my legs up on the bulkhead. So you may have a baby beside you, as long as they're understanding and the parents are understanding as well. But I find just being able to elevate my legs that little bit more helps significantly because I swell so much on a plane.
It's a great tip.
That's just my little tip that I noticed on my last trip overseas.
Yeah.
The last time I flew, I actually did something sort of similar in that I actually stuck my fingers into between the headrest of the person in front and stayed so I could actually relax and let my arm relax in an elevated position. And it wasn't enough that I poked them in the back of the neck. So, but it's adapt to your environment to suit what you need. Yeah, definitely.
There's also little pillows that have a sealed part in the middle for most of it. So to get that kind of movement of your legs, they're only kind of, 6 inches each side, but you can pump from side to side and up and
Push
down.
cush, I think they're called.
Thank you. I was trying to think of a name. So the push, they are incredibly good if you're needing to, even at your desk at work or, the long train, long airfare, just being able to back and forth. I need to just let you know that Debbie, who's online, says her best travel tip is to carry a box of antibiotics in your suitcase in case you develop cellulitis. You don't need to try and find a foreign doctor. So I would say I do that everywhere. I always have some current antibiotics just in case. And drink plenty of water, keep yourself hydrated. I'm keeping an eye on the time and we're well over, but don't worry, I'll just, make it work. But I think we're probably at the end of questions for today. Is there anyone with anything burning for now or no? All good? So I would like for you to join with me in thanking our panellists. Absolutely fantastic, really interesting to have a conversation with you and terrific tips. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
In moderation, all good, in moderation. We are nearing the close of today, and it is my privilege to actually just wind up and close today's conference. And so in addition to thanking our panellists, I would like to thank all of you, everybody online, those of you who are here in the room sharing today with us, coming to learn, gather more information about this condition, find your tribe, and join with us in the launch of the new association. It's been absolutely fabulous and exciting to be able to do that together today. I would like to acknowledge the Australasian Lymphology Association and the terrific partnership that we have in terms of this conference every couple of years and being able to effectively steal the professionals that they bring in and get that expert advice, which is incredibly valuable. And so I do want to acknowledge the support of the ALA. They support us in many, many ways, including being able to make venue available, those sorts of things. So it's a fantastic thing. It also gives us that access to the trade exhibitors as well, which again is a great partnership for us. So I do want to acknowledge that. I would like to, just a last plug and a reminder, please, if you are able, it would be fantastic to have you join our membership and join that Strengthening Voice and get the word out there to your friends and family and people that you know with lymphedema. Share the page, you know, pop that website out there so that we can get the news out there that there is an organisation to represent and provide those supports. I'll put one plug in just at the end of the day, which is as a newly established association, we obviously, as a band of volunteers and looking to provide these supports, we would welcome your donations. We would welcome if you have a very rich and famous friend. We would welcome that kind of financial support as well as we think about how we're going to establish, found and grow into a really strong and representative organisation. So if you've got your thinking caps on for who you know who might be able to assist with that financially, that would be fantastic. I do... Absolutely, yes, sorry, I'm being prompted in the corner over there. So again, you know, we obviously work as volunteers across this association, and if you would like to donate of your time, volunteer, support groups through to the coffee that happens with support groups, through to potentially being on a board, or you might be interested in editing a newsletter, or there's a whole range of different things that you might be able to volunteer to. So we welcome your involvement. We welcome you coming on the journey as we build this really vibrant and strong association. In closing for today, I would like to particularly thank my colleagues on the board. It's been a fun, robust, incredible little ride across this last couple of years. There's been a lot of work that we've needed to do, as I alluded to this morning, the blood, sweat and tears of volunteers over 30 years in building different groups in different states, and then coming together to see how that will join together to provide this association with a national profile, platform and voice. All the legal, all the financial, even trying to come up with a brand. I hope you like the new logo. But it's been fun, actually, for all that we tore our hair out at different points. And so I want to just acknowledge everyone who's contributed to get us to this space, and particularly my colleagues on the board. I look forward to the next little while. I think it'll be a lot of fun as we continue to do what we do and build this association. So we are the Lymphoedema Association Australia. We're here with you on the journey, and we hope that you want to join our tribe. Go well, stay safe on your travels home, enjoy that beautiful scenery out the window, and no doubt we'll see you again soon.